Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. In our last episode, we touched on how being outside can help us connect with our true, authentic selves in a space that is completely natural and free from artificial influences. This week, I thought we'd investigate this a bit more, and who better for me to talk to than my lovely colleague, Robyn Vincent. As well as being the head teacher at the outdoor school, Robyn is a certified women's coach with a keen interest in personal growth and leadership development. Thanks for joining me today, Robyn.
Thank you.
So I think I'm going to start by asking you, what do you mean when you talk about being authentic, and how would you explain this to someone who's got no context of what we're talking about?
Well, I looked it up, actually. The actual definition is that authenticity means something of undisputed origin, not a copy, and something genuine. For me, the core of authenticity is the courage to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, but also to set those boundaries. So those are the really important things to me. And I think it's about not straying away from what you believe is right in order to appease others or to choose safety over that kind of authentic belief that you hold. A really good example of being on the wrong end of someone who's not authentic. So I remember doing my teacher training and being told, don't smile till Christmas.
Oh my goodness.
That you shouldn't...
Well, as a teacher?
Just as a teacher,
okay.
You shouldn't smile till Christmas because you don't want to give the children the impression that you're nice or their friend or anything like that, which I just couldn't handle.
That's mad.
When I've been in front of a class of children or in front of a group of adults, I can't do it.
No.
I can't actually not be who I am.
Yeah.
And I've also really believed that you teach through your relationships, and that's even more true probably with your own children and with special needs children.
Yes.
You don't have a relationship, you can't do that.
No, yeah, well, I was just about to say, as a parent, children do what they see, don't they? So
yeah, absolutely.
You need to,
Yeah. So being told not to smile till Christmas was ridiculous.
Yes.
And then through all of my career, I've been told that in order to be a head teacher, you have to be a Rottweiler.
Yeah.
That the only way, and that for me kind of puts the emphasis on power and aggression and authority, which is not what I believe leadership is about. So there's this myth around presenting yourself in a very, very false way. And I think what's happened is that the more people are told that and the more people are shown that that's a good way to conduct yourself, the more it happens.
Yeah.
So we're not challenging it because we're seeing people in authority acting like that. ATherefore, if we want to be in authority, be successful, that's how we must act, which is just ridiculous. So, as I said, I think for me, it's too long we've been talking about leadership and parenting, about being about that power and that status and that position. I think the parents that I know, it's changed quite a lot in parenting. You don't hear now so often children should be seen and not heard, or because I said so.
I was just about to say that. Well, why?
Because I said so. And that's good enough. But I don't think it's changed much in leadership.
Okay.
That it's still that kind of, you will do as I tell you because of my position and what I say is right. It's still prevalent, that because I said so. And I think authenticity for me is about deciding what you think is right and sticking to that.
Yeah.
But not refusing to adapt the route map, because then it becomes inflexible and not open to question, which is, we're human.
Yes,
and
we're
also,
allowed to change our minds.
And situations change. But we can change the route. If we come up against a barrier, we can go round it, over it, under it, through it, whatever. But as long as we don't compromise the integrity of that initial intention, and that I think is for me what the authenticity means to be. It's the uncompromising integrity of your fundamental belief.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it about being authentic is sharing your vulnerability. So not something that any of the leaders I've ever worked for ever did.
No.
You never show your vulnerability. Staff need to think that I know what I'm doing all the time and that I'm right.
Yeah.
Which again just models that as a model of authority,
which is interesting because you would never think that of anyone else in your life. You wouldn't think, well, they've always got this, that's the proverbial together, they always know what they're doing.
Either you believe they've always got it together, or you think they should have.
Yeah, which is
rubbish.
Impossible. Yeah, how's someone going to always have it together?
So for me, being a leader, but also being a mother, being a parent, is about the power of the role model.
Yes.
It's an honour and it's a privilege to lead myself, to lead a group of people, to lead my family. So I try to role model owning my mistakes, make it okay for others, because if they see me make a mistake, own up to it, move on and deal with it, then it makes it okay for them to do it.
Even in the little things, I remember
exactly.
my kids smashing my favourite mug, and I was in the next room and I could hear them going, "Oh my goodness, Mum's going to be so cross." And my first instinct was to be cross because I loved that mug. But then I went in and I said, "Look, it was an accident.
It happens.
It's okay."
We need to allow other people to learn from their own mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, my children are grown up now, but I remember the first time my oldest daughter was allowed to go to a disco, and I didn't know who she was going to be or what she was going to do. So I read somewhere a definition of an authentic leader is that you make things better by your presence, but you make sure that you give people the tools for that to continue in your absence.
Okay.
And for me, that was always what I sort of thought about with my children, was I can only teach them how to make the right decisions. I then have to trust
that they're going to go and do that.
That they are going to go and do that. Hardest bit of parenting.
I'm coming up to that stage and I'm terrified of it, the idea of them going out and not knowing where they are and what they're doing. And
Exactly. So if we own our own mistakes and we show our own vulnerability, or say, I don't know the answer to this, we've done two things. We've given people permission to make mistakes. What we have to do is make sure that we put an obligation on them to learn from that, but only by doing it from ourselves. Or for ourselves. I mean, just to finish off on authenticity, we have to let go of what we think we are supposed to be like.
Yes.
If we do that, then other people can do it. So this is my first headship.
Yeah.
And when I first started, I truly believed I needed to be the first into the building and the last one out.
Yeah.
But actually, in talking with other people, all I was doing was role modelling.
Working late.
That is what success and authenticity looks like.
Yes.
When in actual fact, it was much more useful for me to say, I've done enough today, I can't do any more, I'm going to go home. Are you ladies okay to lock up? Or you gentlemen able to lock up? So, it's about role modelling how to do it.
Yes.
It's for your children and for your staff.
We mentioned courage a little bit in there. And I guess when we were talking about, being true to yourself, but how do you think this comes into play when it comes to parenting or educating in a way that differs to what we see presented kind of in mainstream media and in a lot of schools?
Well, I actually wanted to quote Winston Churchill.
Okay.
Because he said, courage is the ability to stand up and speak, but it's also it takes courage to sit down and listen. And I thought that's really interesting because people think of courage
as a lion
or a warrior with a sword, and sometimes it's not that at all. Sometimes courage is, I'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah. And
so we have to think really carefully about using the word courage. But to me, the mainstream media and education wants to control.
Yeah.
Our schools are tasked with turning out clones with a measurable amount of learned knowledge and facts. Young people who conform to this kind of hidden, vague design are not taught to problem solve, to create, to think for themselves, or to question anything. I used to love teaching media studies because the first line in the syllabus said teachers must ensure that the issues are up to date and that they teach children to question the messages they're being given by the media. I absolutely loved teaching media just for that reason.
Yeah.
As a parent or an educator or a leader, courage is needed to challenge the basic integrity and authenticity of this model that we have to turn out clones.
Yeah.
that everybody has to be the same. We have to conform, we have to dress the same, wear the same things, say the same things.
Get 11 GCSEs.
Get 11 GCSEs by being able to recite the Queens of England and the dates of accession, that kind of thing. I mean, and for me, I think parenting is the most challenging, complex, frustrating, beautiful job I think I've ever done. It's almost easier to stand up as an educator and do what I believe is right. We just made huge changes to our curriculum. It no longer resembles the national curriculum at all for the first 2 years. And I had to be quite brave about that. But as a parent, finding the courage to do something different comes with that emotional baggage because you don't want to damage your children. But it's the only way that society is going to change. Because if great leadership or parenting is not about taking charge of those in your care, then it's about taking care of those in your charge.
Yeah.
And that's the shift I think we've got to make. We designed our new curriculum based on, this child is 25, they're in the pub, what do they need to be able to do?
This
to
is
enjoy
a
their
concept
life.
that Chev said, and I love this idea of thinking, where are they going to be in 10 years?
What do they need to know? So that's kind of where we based our new curriculum. So things don't if things don't change, they will stay the same.
Yeah.
And we can only change things by doing things differently and having the courage to do that. But it's also, I think something I'm learning is that courage is also about holding people to account, though. So if we allow our children or our teams to engage in behaviour that doesn't serve what we're trying to do, then we make a new norm and it doesn't serve it and nothing changes. So if we make that okay, then we've lost our vision with children or with staff. So there's also the courage to be authentic, be vulnerable, invite creativity and innovation, which vulnerability allows. But we also have to hold people to account to that.
And hold those boundaries.
And hold those boundaries. And when they're doing something which is not what you'd like, then we need to challenge it. And, we do it a lot with young children. But as children get older and begin to find their feet, it's part of our authenticity to let them do that. But there has to be a point where we just say, that's not acceptable behaviour. That's not okay. And that's, don't get me wrong, I haven't been the perfect parent by any means.
No, but I was thinking, I remember reading a book by Dr. Sears, but he talked about having boundaries about the important things, and he was saying that, if you keep those boundaries on the important things, then the kids will learn to respect them. So, for example, with preschoolers, it doesn't actually matter what shoes they wear in the morning or, what clothes they choose. So he was like, that's something you don't need to fight with them about. But something like not running into a road, that's a boundary you hold. And he was like, if you hold these important boundaries and let them have a bit more freedom to be authentic and to be themselves in the smaller things that don't really matter in the long run, then he was like, hopefully, in theory, they'll grow up to respect those more important boundaries. And
they'll be able to take those things forward and use them to make decisions in your absence, which is, in the end, is what we're doing as teachers or parents, really. But it's fraught with that kind of emotional tension, isn't it? That you just want to keep them safe, and if they do this or do that, somebody's going to say this to them or somebody's going to say that to them. But resisting that attempt to control out of love is so hard.
It's really hard.
So hard to do.
And there's that fear as well, I think, when it's your kids, that you think, if they succeed or fail in life, sometimes you think, well, it's all on me. And that's quite a scary pressure sometimes to think if they end up, I don't know, really unhappy for some reason, you think, is that my fault? So that's quite a scary thing to
even though we know that's unrealistic.
Yes, we know, but sometimes. So seeing as we're talking about children, why do you think authenticity is so important when it comes to being around them, either as a parent or in a kind of an educational setting? How do you think it impacts the young people that we're spending time with if the adults in their lives are being true to themselves?
I think it goes back to what I was saying about role models. So, I was 18 when I had my first child. Absolutely terrified. Oh my God, how am I going to be able to look after this little bundle of life? And my midwife said to me, the only thing you need to remember is they need to feel loved, but also remember that children are like wet cement. Anything you do leaves a lasting impression.
That's a great analogy.
It's a great analogy. So, for example, and I didn't do this very well with my daughters, but you can you can encourage your daughter to have a positive body image, for example, but what they really observe is your relationship with your body. So don't do as I do as I tell you doesn't work.
No, because they see you dieting and saying, I look fat or whatever. That's what they listen to.
So that kind of, so it's more important to sort of give that example. And another one that I find really important at school is what we call pip and rip.
Pip and rip.
So you praise in public,
okay,
but you rebuke or report or retort in private.
Okay.
And so if children don't see us doing that as staff, it's no good us telling them to do it.
So that's what you're doing to the staff, not to the kids.
So
you praise your colleagues.
You praise your colleagues. You say, thank you so much for doing that in front of the learners. You say, God, you did that a lot better than I would have done it. Thank you.
Yeah.
But if you say, I'm not sure you dealt with that correctly, one doesn't do that.
Which again, I'd argue, united front in parenting. Like me and my other half have always said, if we don't agree with the decision the other one's made when it comes to the kids, we never say it in front of the kids. It's always after they've gone to bed.
But also, I'd like to teach the children to do that.
Yes.
To be really, really nice to each other. But if they have got something they want to say, to do it privately.
Yeah.
Because that's
more respectful.
It's just good relationship stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely more respectful.
And it's being authentic around that. It comes down to the role model. Kids will learn what they see 100 times more than what they're told or what's written down for them. So it's the only way to teach them, really. And I see it as an absolute privilege to be a role model for our young children and for my team. And I suppose another thing that is really important is that it builds the trust. So if you're being authentic, then you're being consistent.
Yeah.
And if you're being consistent, young people will learn to trust how you will react. And so that when you've got that trust, they will trust you to try different things, to try solutions, to take risks, to learn things. But if you haven't got that consistency, you don't have the trust. And if you think about it, if you're training a puppy even, if you react differently every time they do a wee in the house, they're not going to know what they've got to do. But if you're consistent every single time, which is tough, it's really tough to do. But the trust is huge. I mean, you can't do anything without it. But I believe it's the authenticity and the consistency that does that. And if we, and I've said this before really, but if we show them success is about power, aggression, authority, position, then that's what they'll think they've got to do to make you proud.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's what they'll do, because every child wants their parent to be proud of them. But you don't inspire your team or your children by telling them how good you are. You do it by telling them how good they are.
Yes, yeah.
So we constantly got to just sort of, say it again, just role model what we're doing.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we give them permission to do it.
Yes.
So if we say, actually, your teacher said this, so my son will kill me. There was an example where the school phoned me to say he was going to have a detention.
Okay.
And normally I'd say, fine. And I'd said, what's he done?
Yeah.
And the teacher, I believe, had been very biased, actually.
Okay, against him
in front of the class and been very unpleasant. So he had said, in French, I'd rather go to Iraq than France on holiday.
Okay.
Because she had been pushing him, saying, well, why didn't you go to France?
Yeah.
And being quite,
okay.
Son of a British dairy farmer, So I said to Craig, look, you respect your teachers, you do as you're told, but in this case, I'm not going to give my consent for that. Yeah. And I explained why. I mean, he was 13, so he was old enough to understand the conversation. But I wasn't prepared to compromise what I believed to be right in that particular situation. So I explained it to him and sort of worked through it with him so that he understood why I had done that.
Yeah.
But that then gives him permission to stand up for himself.
Yes.
In other situations. Yeah. So, and if we show up every day to situations where we can't control the outcome, that is courage.
Yes.
And that's authenticity. And we teach them to weigh every action and every decision against their basic values.
Yeah.
And they see us doing it, then maybe something will change.
Yes.
And that vulnerability also creates a culture where innovation is encouraged. And the phrase that I really liked comes from Brené Brown. She says you want a culture in your family, in your company, whatever, where when it comes to making mistakes and responsibilities and things like that, armour is not necessary.
Yeah.
So armour's not necessary, but it's also not rewarded.
Okay.
So you're not rewarded
Yeah.
by covering things up. So the important thing is we admit the bad decisions, we correct them, we move on, but we ensure that we teach others not to make the same mistakes.
Yes.
So I had a big thing about apologising to my children as soon as they were old enough to understand.
Yeah.
Mummy was really cross, Mummy shouldn't have shouted, and I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
You know, so...
Well, I do that with mine now.
Yeah.
I'll say to them, I'm actually feeling really stressed today and it's not really your fault, but I do need some time, so I'm sorry for shouting, but just give me 5 minutes.
And if you look at the growing, the anxiety and concerns and fears and mental health of our young people, well, and ourselves actually, the last 2 years, it's the fear of unknown and of getting things wrong that feeds that. So if we can somehow make the unknown something to be an opportunity, something to be exciting, not something we have to control, and if we can do something to limit how we feel about getting something wrong, then we've made a huge difference to learning itself requires you to take a risk. I remember putting 3 years to get the courage to put my hand up to ask a question in maths, doing quadratic equations, and I said, I understand the first bit, I understand, can you explain the brackets again, please, sir? Physically patted me on the head and said, never mind, dear, you're quite attractive, I'm sure you'll get married.
Oh my goodness.
And therefore I learned
not to ask questions in maths.
Not to ask questions and not to take the risk of getting something wrong, because I was publicly humiliated.
Oh, it's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah. And I know I'm old, but I'm not that old, it's in living memory.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I was once told was that grace means that all of our mistakes serve a purpose instead of serving shame.
That's
which
lovely.
I also love.
Yeah.
And the final thing really about why it's so important to be authentic is the concept of servant leadership.
Yeah.
That the job of the leader is to ask how they can help other people achieve.
Yes.
Not.
Which is absolutely parenthood as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the start is to, as a leader, you share the vision, and at the end you say thank you, but in between you're just serving that team of people.
Yeah, making them achieve.
So,
that's lovely. As you know, I always want to bring the outdoors into our conversations. How do you think the natural world can help in our quest to find our authentic selves and in equipping us with the courage we need to live our kind of true selves?
Well, the crucial part for me is the fact that being outdoors allows me to breathe, and it allows me to alleviate some of the pressure. When I'm in the office, there are people, it's noisy, it's hot, and it's really hard not to conform just because it's easy.
Yeah.
To exchange that authenticity for safety, really. So when I'm outdoors, say I can actually breathe, and I'm a big believer in not knee-jerk reacting, but it's much harder not to do it when you're in a high-pressure environment. So taking the time to be outdoors just allows me to reconnect with what it is I do believe.
Yeah.
Allows me to breathe. I've got to admit to preferring the sea to the woods, but
well, that's still outdoors.
Sometimes on a Friday night, the staff will just sort of sit around the fire for a bit.
Yeah.
And if I can get the opportunity to go down there and just to be, my big challenge is being still.
Yes.
And I
struggle with that as well. Move.
Yeah, and the closest I get to it are those moments sitting
outside
by the sea or sitting outside. Because there's lots of different types of rest, and quietening my mind is the one I can't do. And it's easier to do that outdoors.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that completely. I when I'm at home, constantly moving one thing to another, and then outdoors is the one place where you think, I can relax, and the endless to-do list kind of pauses for a bit.
And Chev, our director always says, the times when you take 10 minutes are the times when the really good ideas come.
Yes, yeah.
And that self-care feeds the little well of courage.
And also, I guess, I'd argue as well that the times when you feel like you can't take 10 minutes outdoors are the times when you need them the most.
Yeah, and that's where it's really important, I think, to have a support network to go.
Someone says, get outside, go for a walk. Yes.
Shut that computer just for a minute. Or your lovely PA gives you a bar of chocolate.
That too. Go and eat that in the sunshine.
Yeah.
Have you got any tips for those struggling to be brave enough to own who they are? How would you encourage those listening to be true to themselves, even in the face of challenge or criticism?
Crucial part for that, for me, is consciously building your support network.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do these things on your own, to keep the courage. So first thing, and really important, is to decide what it is you do believe.
Yeah.
What are the things, the battles you are prepared to fight? What's worth it? What do you believe in fundamentally? And use that to judge yourself. Am I doing the right thing in kind of every situation? But those, always asking myself the questions, is this right? What will happen if I don't stand up for this? That's a really good way of judging it. If you're not sure whether something is like a non-negotiable for you, what would happen if I don't stand up for this is a really good question. And surround yourself with people really who will challenge you, who will ask those questions. And if you're confident that you know what you believe, then I think it's worth seeking out like-minded individuals, because you can stand up for what you believe alone, but it's an awful lot easier.
It is, yeah.
If you've got people to do that.
I was going to say, as someone who home educates, I think finding a community of people that are also doing that has been the biggest kind of confidence boost. I think when they were small, I used to be embarrassed taking them out in school hours. I'd be like, what if someone stops me and says something? But now it's like, it's fine.
And you need people around you that are going to help you stand up for what you believe. Yeah. But they will also be the ones that you could share your vulnerability and mistakes with, and share that good practice and question yourself. I truly believe that creativity and problem solving happens when you've got the right people around you. I read a lot of people like Brené Brown, Simon Sinek and Dr. Patton. Brené Brown is particularly vocal about courage, and I think it's also worth remembering that you don't necessarily set out to be a leader.
No.
It happens through your constant actions, your integrity, and it comes from passion, not position. Anybody can lead anything because you're passionate about it. It's not about position. And I suppose the other thing really is not to be afraid to change your methods, adapting to overcome obstacles or barriers, as long as you don't undermine the integrity of that, what it is you actually believe. And I never stop asking myself, do I still believe this? Is this still serving the purpose? Is it what I still want to fight for? And that's when you have to have people around you. Really.
Because actually it's okay, isn't it, to say, I've changed my mind, I've got reasons for changing my mind. And sometimes when you get to, I don't know whether you feel like you've stood by something for so long that you don't feel able to say to people, actually, I've changed my mind.
About that, and that again is vulnerability, isn't it? And ever since I decided I wanted to be a head teacher, I always knew the first thing that I was going to do was appoint a deputy who would challenge me. Because you do not want to be surrounding yourself with people who are going to say yes. Because it doesn't work.
Oh, well, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to finish by asking you 3 questions, which I've been asking everyone. And the first one is, how do you relax? I know, as a head teacher and a dairy farmer, that you probably don't have much time, but hopefully you find some.
Well, I do some big things. So I have spa days and I have a regular massage. But I also try to stick by the email cut-off at a certain time of the evening, limit my screen time, and sometimes I just allow myself to sit and watch absolute rubbish.
Excellent. And what are you reading or listening to right now?
I never read one book at a time.
Have you got a pile teetering on your
As an
bedstand?
English teacher, I think, but I'm reading Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone by Diana Gabaldon, which is the latest in the Outlander series.
Okay.
And I'm also reading Better Off Dead by Lee Childs.
Okay.
And I'm always permanently listening to Bad Out of Hell by Meatloaf. But I've just been to the C2C Country to Country Festival in London, so I'm listening to some mod country at the moment.
Oh, brilliant. Who was there? Anyone I've never heard of?
I doubt it.
No.
Coombs, Darius Rucker?
No. Excellent. And finally, we did ask this earlier, but why is being outdoors so important to you?
I can breathe, I can think, and it's the closest I can come to being still and just being.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for joining me today, Robyn.
No problem. Nice to be invited.
And hopefully we'll talk to you again on another episode soon.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you to Robyn for joining us today. I really enjoyed talking to you about authenticity and courage, both for educators and for parents. And hopefully those of you listening out there enjoyed it just as much. I'd ask again, if you've got time, to like the podcast, rate it, subscribe, tell all your friends about it. We'd really love for more people to be able to find us. And that's all for today, and we look forward to you joining us for another podcast episode in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for listening.